All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We are so glad you're here joining us this evening. Our team is excited to continue sharing about this new park project through this presentation that we're going to do this evening. And then we're going to follow up with some extra time for any additional questions from attending community members. But first, I'll take a moment to introduce our team. My name is Liana. I work in community engagement at THPRD, and I'll be facilitating tonight. We're also joined by Tim Bonin, our senior project manager. We're joined by Gary Keck, who's our manager of design and development at THPRD. And we also have Tracy Johnson. And Tracy works with Environmental Science Associates, and she's a consultant on this project. And as they each take the virtual floor tonight, they will more formally introduce themselves. But first, we want to take a moment to acknowledge all the community members who are joining us, whether that's live in this moment or later on YouTube. We're looking forward to hearing your input this evening, as well as through surveys and more from you all as we move forward in the next few weeks with the project. I'd also like to take a moment just to let you know a little bit about what to expect. So we are recording this meeting, and as mentioned, we'll be sharing it on the project's webpage through YouTube. So it'll provide another avenue for everyone in our community to learn about where we are in the project and learn how to provide feedback. We'll also be offering a Spanish translation of the meeting included in that video. So soon we will be sharing a PowerPoint presentation to provide an update, kind of where we are in the project, lots of great information. And then I'll announce the extra time for additional questions and comments at the end with our attending community members. But if any questions come up for our attending community members during the meeting, you're always welcome to throw those questions or comments into the chat using the chat bar at any time. And what I'll do is I'll try to field those and keep an eye on those as we move forward. So if they're topical, I'll do my best to keep my eye on those and bring them into the conversation. So what I'll do now is we'll go ahead and get started with our PowerPoint. I'll turn it over to Tracy and Tim to start our presentation for the evening.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Bonin. I work in design and development. I will be the project manager for this project. We'll share my email with you here tonight, as well as you can find me on the project website. There's a little button you can click for THPRD staff if you have any questions along the way. But I am here throughout the duration of the project. We started this project back in April with a virtual introduction of the project. And right now we're at the tail end of our public engagement. So we're excited to show you the concept plan tonight, as well as the name of the project. And if you like it, and we hope you do, from here, we will take it to the board, to our board in November to get their approval, and then move the project along from there. So we have to go through the city of Beaverton through what's called the land use process. We have to go through land use, and that takes 3 to 4 months to go through that process and work with the city on that, understand what we can and can't do with the project site. And then we'll work on construction drawings, get those put together and submit those for permitting by the end of next year. So hopefully at the beginning of 2023, we'll be ready to bid the project out, and we'll get that out to bid and start construction sometime in June 2023 and finish in the fall. So let's take a look at the site. This first slide. So here's the future location of the project, a little red square in the center. And we have these concentric rings around it, as you can see. So it shows a half-mile walking radius. So you can see it's not too far from Allen to the north. There's some food carts and other businesses directly north along Allen Boulevard, but we are right along Lombard. Let's go to the next slide. And then we have here the site itself. So there's a Lombard Avenue and Baker Loop to the south, which is a new community that is just built out, and they built the last home to the south of us. As you can see in the aerial photo, there are lots of trees on the site. So there's lots of mature trees. Most of them are Douglas firs, but some really beautiful trees on the site that we want to preserve and integrate into the design of the project. There is a house currently on the property. It was owned by the VG family. That will be taken down so we can make room for the park. We need to use all the space we can. Unfortunately, we can't keep that structure. It has to be taken down to make way for the park itself. So that'll be pretty much where the open space is for us to program the different activities we have for the park. So with that, I will let Liana take over, and she's going to talk a little bit about the public engagement process.
Thank you so much, Tim. I already see some questions popping into the chat. That's a great question, and we're definitely going to get to that about the fence around the property. I'm just going to talk briefly about community engagement, what we've done so far for the project to give people some background. So in 2018 to 2020, our district embarked on a community visioning process. It was a great big project where we had lots of support from different task force members who are multicultural, multilingual from all over the district and different ages. And we engaged over 10,000 people, got over 12,000 ideas for what parks should look like and what our district should be doing, and then 117 engagement opportunities to get people's input. And that helped us develop a long-term guiding vision, really a vision action plan. And it helps us bring community ideas to life. So that's kind of like the big picture of where we started with community engagement. And then in our next slide, and you can move on to our next slide there, Tracy. Oh, there it goes. Okay, thank you. Community engagement, we got some community from the community visioning. We had emerged from this process we conducted, emerged these really great goal areas, and they help kind of guide us for whenever we develop a new park. And so some of those areas, as you see here, or the 4 total areas, are welcoming and inclusive, accessible and safe, preserving natural spaces, and play for everyone. So this is what different people in our district wanted to see us working on. And so with this park, we were really focusing especially on that play for everyone. So all the ways that people want to play, move, and interact with THPRD. And on our next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about engagement for this very specific project at Baker and Lombard. So we, for this particular project, we started engagement in the spring of this year, and we're moving, of course, into the fall of 2021, wrapping up in the next month or two with community engagement. And so we had a lot of wonderful events over the summer. We were fortunate, even during the pandemic, that we could get outside and talk to people. And so we had, not only have we had virtual meetings like this one, but we had outdoor in-person events. And we're also doing some tabling at the library and farmers market to get the word out and get input. We also had online surveys, and we have one open right now, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And we've engaged so far over at least 400 plus neighbors in the community to get a better understanding of what kind of things people want to see at this park. And so on the next slide are just some highlights from that. Park activities, people wanted to see a really gathering, playing, exercising, relaxing. In terms of what kinds of park spaces people wanted to see that they shared, they said multi-use open spaces, like fields, shaded space with trees or shelters, multi-use pathways, and spaces with water. We also asked community members about different types of themes that they wanted to see. And themes are great because they help us understand what a park might look like in the different amenities and what kind of name the park might have. So the focuses we heard in themes were natural elements like plants, animals, forests, a lot of appreciation for the trees that exist on site. We heard an interest in whimsy and adventure, storytelling, and a way to connect people to multiple cultures and languages. We heard that a lot. People really wanted that opportunity to connect with different cultures and languages. So on the next slide, you'll see that we also shared information about what a concept plan might look like. So we put out some different ideas for concept plans, and we heard a lot of input around these different concept plans, things people liked, things people didn't like. And moving forward on this slide, if you would, Tracy, you'll see that concept B was the most popular with the water play, as we mentioned. And so what Tracy will get into a little bit more of is what we heard and how we started moving forward with some of those different ideas from community members about what the amenities were they wanted to see on site and where. And so what I'll do is I'm going to check the chat. Looks like we do have one question we are going to get to soon, so that's great. And Tracy, I'll let you take it away with the next slides. Thank you so much for your help.
Sorry there, technical difficulties. I was trying to unmute myself and I accidentally advanced the slides. Welcome everyone. My name is Tracy Johnson. I'm a landscape architect with Environmental Science Associates, and I've been assisting THPRD with this project since the spring. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on how we've come through the process so far as the design ideas that we've been developing for this project. So first, I just wanted to show you a few images of the site. As Tim mentioned in his presentation, existing site is really dominated by this large grove of trees. And so when you look at the into the park from the street, you really notice that it's shady, it's heavily treed. And these trees, many of them, particularly the native trees like the Douglas firs and the ponderosa pines, are somewhat protected by the city of Beaverton. And so our goal moving forward is to really take note of that and to work with those trees and around those trees to minimize impacts to them. It also, you know, looking in from the outside, you can see there is an existing fence along Lombard, and there is a lot of overgrown landscaping that residents has been there for many years, and I think was probably, you know, it was well loved, but as from a park perspective, it's a little overgrown and it's a little hard to see into the site. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about as we move into the park design phase. So this is what we call, this is our existing conditions, opportunities, and constraints figure. And what we looked at here is we looked at some of the parts of the site and how we might be able to, you know, improve them, things that we could use again. So for example, there is a looped driveway that comes off of Lombard, which provides a paved entrance at 2 locations from Lombard. And then there's a large area that where the house and the various outbuildings are located. And we really see those as a great opportunity for where a lot of the park amenities can occur on the site. Those areas are what we would consider to be already disturbed, and the trees exist in and around those areas. And so those are areas that we are anticipating that we can redevelop and convert from the residential use that it used to be into a park with minimal impact to the trees. Baker Loop on the south side of the site currently kind of dead ends into the fence on the edge of the park property. And so that's an opportunity for pedestrian access. The sidewalks basically dead end at the fence as well. And so our intention would be to open a portion of that fence to allow pedestrian access in from the south as well, and also potentially to provide fire and emergency access. So this is the current concept that we have developed. This is our preliminary concept plan. This was developed from the input we received on the 3 preliminary concepts that we presented at a public neighborhood sort of event in June. So as Liana said, we presented 3 different concepts at that meeting. Concept B was the preferred concept. It received the most votes and positive feedback, both in person and in the online survey. However, there were elements in the other concepts that people liked as well. And so that was something we had adapted. We started with concept B, but then we adapted it to include some of the elements that were in other concepts that people really had strong affinity to. So a couple of elements that I wanted to point out on this. So this preliminary concept includes the following potential park elements. It includes hard surface and soft surface paths. There's interest in both types of paths within this park. It includes 2 shelters, what we would consider to be a traditional play area, a nature play area, and we're hoping to also include water play. And then it includes a small multi-purpose court, and then open lawns that can be used for a variety of purposes. So I'll show that in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to just go through a few figures here that sort of highlight the different elements. So what you can see on this screen is the brown is sort of the soft surface trail network, and the gray is the hard surface trail network. And the intention here is to have hard surface trails, which would be paved with asphalt or concrete, that are entering the site from the various pedestrian access points and connecting to the primary elements such as the picnic shelters and the sport court. And then internally we have a loop trail that includes some paved surface trails and some soft surface trails, which would likely be compacted gravel to provide a little bit of a different user experience. So you have a variety. We have community members that are interested in both types of trails. In addition, we have two shelter locations, which you can see here, and we have them, they're near each other, but they are separated, which could allow for two groups, or, people who are visiting the picnic shelter, multiple groups to use them simultaneously. The concept B that we presented in the spring had one larger shelter, but we really got a lot of feedback from the community that two smaller shelters were more desirable. And so the goal at this point is to include two shelters. As we move through the design process, the ability to do that will be somewhat dependent on the budgetary constraints for the project, but we are hopeful at this point that we'll be able to achieve this goal. The pink area here that's highlighted is what we've identified as our traditional play area. That would include, what you would think of when you think of a playground, things like swings, slides, and some, newer equipment that's still sort of, it's new and different in the climbing area, such as rocks, climbers, or net climbers. In addition, we will be having another public meeting in a few months to talk about specifically selecting the type of play equipment to include in this park. For right now, these are just some placeholder ideas as far as the size of the area and the type of equipment, and we'll be narrowing down on that in the future. In addition, we have a couple of areas that we're anticipating to develop as nature play areas. And so these areas, you'll notice they're surrounded by existing trees. And the idea here is to really fit within the existing landscape, keeping the trees, but allowing some play under the trees that would allow for a little bit more flexible play. So nature play often includes log climbers or log stepping or balance beam type things. Also, it could include rocks and boulders. And then sometimes in addition to those elements, we also would include a water play. And so here we're showing a potential water play location for those who might have been inside the site and are familiar with it. It roughly correlates to the location where there's an existing pond with some existing rocks and trees and landscaping and berming around it. We're hoping to redevelop and repurpose a portion of that to maybe integrate water play into the site. This is not anticipated to be a spray ground. We do have some restrictions on what we think the city is going to allow us to do here, but we're hoping to maybe incorporate some sort of a pump or bubbler or a combination of those to provide a water source that kids can activate and use, and they can turn it on and off. And then you can see some photo examples here of some different forms that can take. Sometimes it's kind of like a rock river through the, concrete and rock river that the water flows through. Sometimes there are pieces that you can move to create for the kids to create dams and to play with the water. So that's our current concept, but we will be meeting with the city in the next few weeks and discussing this further to see if it's viable from their perspective. In addition, we have a potential multi-use court that we're showing sort of at the north end of the site, sort of the northeast corner. Again, this is another element that we'll be including in a future meeting with the neighborhood to talk about playground equipment selection and what type of court we might have. We did ask during the survey in June, we asked about preferences on courts, and generally there was some interest in court. There was some interest in basketball courts specifically, but the final type will be to be determined as we move through the process. And the final site element that we have included in this park is the some extensive lawn areas. And so the lawn that you can see here, which is kind of outlined in the olive green. That correlates with the existing lawn that's kind of along the frontage of Lombard behind the fence, and then an open lawn in the back corner that kind of correlates to where the existing building and the garden behind the house are currently located. This is one of the most open areas of the site, especially once the house is gone, it'll be one of the most open areas. So it really lends itself to being lawn, open and sunny. And it would be an opportunity for people to play catch or to have a picnic on the lawn, or a variety of uses, the things you might do in a park while you're there on a nice day. So that is the overview of the elements that we are proposing to include in this park. And with that, I believe I will stop sharing and perhaps field some questions if there are any. I realize that one of the questions that I saw that came up in the chat pertained to the existing fences. So I can say that the current plan is that the fence along the frontage of Lombard, there's an existing wrought iron fence along Lombard. That fence will be removed and replaced. The intention is that because Lombard is such a busy street, we feel like for the safety of the users, we would want to have a fence along that street frontage just to prevent kids and dogs and things from running out into the street. The fences around the perimeter on the other three sides, their fate is somewhat to be determined. The fence is made of multiple different forms. We have wood fence, we have some chain link fence, and it doesn't always occur on the property line. And so that is something that we'll be determining in communication with the city over the next few weeks. We are going to be scheduling a pre-application conference with them to talk about our land use application. Currently, any of the fence that's heavily degraded will be removed, and then whether or not we need to replace it will be based on the input we receive from the city. And Leanna, were there any other questions in the chat that I should address before I turn it back over to you?
I don't see any other questions in the chat, but I think what I'll do is maybe just give it one more minute and invite any questions in the chat about any of the information that Tracy has shared so far. And as people might be thinking about any questions they have, I'll let you know that next I'll talk a little bit about the new name for the park, and then we'll talk about some next steps and hopefully leave a little bit more time for questions and comments if they come up. Okay. Here's another question. Will there be street lights and a curfew?
I can answer that one. So our parks are dawn to dusk, and we do not put lights in our parks. We only have lights at our facilities. But there is a street light with the community just to the south of us, the new neighborhood. There's actually a street light right where the road dead ends that will cast some light into the site from there, but there will not be any lights on site.
And I'll just add, Tim, just as always, we encourage if neighbors have any concerns about activities in parks, we always encourage folks to call our safety services number, which I'm going to put in the chat there. And even if it's something that's not happening right in that moment, or maybe it happens continually, they'd always like to know about it, so they know which parks to kind of keep an eye on and what kind of activities are happening where. So we don't have any concerns about that generally, but we always like to share that number, just if you're ever out in any of our parks, you have access to that.
And with that, Liana, is what I want to share. As you mentioned, one of our goals is to make parks accessible and safe. So this property is very overgrown, as Tracy pointed to as well. And so we will look at opening up the site. So from the roadway from the south coming into it, having a good view into the site, and then along Lombard, it's very overgrown with some maybe large rhododendrons and things, is to get that landscape very low, to have, so when people are in the park, they can see out, and vice versa. So we want it to be very safe and open. And there will be some sort of fence along the street, but it would be open. Typically we put up like a low chain link fence along the roadway where it's busy, just to help contain kids and dogs that are in the park.
Excellent. Thanks, Tim. And I'll give one more moment if there are any additional questions for right now. And I'll wait 1 minute and I'll go ahead and share my screen and move forward. Okay. All right, looks like.
Oh, there's a question about Lombard parking.
Yeah.
Yes, so there is public parking along Lombard. And again, this is a neighborhood park, so it's not a destination park, so we'll be adding parking to the site. So we will use Lombard, and hopefully people will also use the bike lanes, which is nice. There's bike lanes right along Lombard as well to access the site. I think on the street to the south, Baker Loop, it's very limited just the way they built those homes. So I don't even know that you could really park on that street. So the parking would be on Lombard for the park.
And our restrooms, yeah.
Yes, we do plan to have a portable restroom on this site. Good questions, thank you.
Yeah, all good questions. And I'll give it 1 more minute for any additional questions that might pop up.
And so while we're waiting for any other questions, so with all our parks, we have, certain amenities that we will have with this. So there'll be a drinking fountain. We usually have it, if there's one drinking fountain, it'll be a drinking fountain, pet fountain, in case you want to bring your pet to the park. There'll be bike racks, trash receptacles, benches, and picnic tables for seating, and of course the shelters as well to have those conveniences.
Great, thank you, Tim, and thanks for the great questions. What I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and share my screen, and I'll talk a little bit about the naming process. And what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and share, and then I'll look for confirmation to my colleagues for confirmation if you are seeing my screen okay. Excellent. Yes. Okay, beautiful. So just kind of a quick overview of how we embark on our naming process at THPRD with parks and trails is that we're really trying to aim for names that help us reach equity between our communities and our site names. So really being able to focus on underrepresented communities and experiences, because so many of our park names are focused on those of us who are well represented in our community. And so what we did is we worked on a very intentionally inclusive outreach process where we talked to local leaders and our partnership organizations to help us come up with some different ideas about names for different parks and trails. And this engagement was really in-depth. So in-depth discussions, we looked at historic and photographic archives. It was multicultural outreach, and our intent was really to honor and reflect the diverse experiences and identities in our community and cultivate a sense of welcome in our different parks. And so move to our next slide here. So for this particular park, the name La Raíz Park was identified, and the meaning of this word is the root, Spanish for the root. And the origin of this name, as I mentioned, is themes that came in from the community input that I just mentioned, that outreach process that we did. But it also, we came up with this name with help from our community input that we received from the hundreds of people we talked to about the themes and input about the park itself and the unique site and ecology at the park. So that incredible group of trees and the root system that really interconnects those trees. And so why this name, the community and our staff both felt that this name fit was that, like our communities, trees live in interdependent relationships through interconnected roots, and trees use roots to share nutrients and communicate for mutual support. Like tree roots, our communities share paths forward, are connected. They're interconnected. And our roots, relationships, our roles in history, and the paths that have led us to this land are deeply entangled. So we grow and we work together toward understanding these relationships. And one of the things we really liked and appreciate about this name is that it also connects to the history of that land and the BG family and the work that they put into the land and their family history with the horseradish root. And so we're also in contact with them about the name as well, if anybody's curious about that. I know we had some questions about that. So that is the name of the new park. And we have right now we have a survey open on both the concept plan that we've shared, that Tracy's provided a lot of detail on, and that survey also asks for your input on this new name. And that survey will be open until October 13th, and you can access that survey through the webpage, which I have added to the chat. So you can go into the chat in the Zoom, find that webpage, open it up. You can take that survey, you can share it with your neighbors, children, anyone else you have in your household who might like to take it. We would love to hear from you. Also, oh, excuse me, I should just pause for any additional questions or comments that people might have. And I am going to, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to ask Tim if we have any questions in the chat as of right now.
No new name, no new questions.
Okay, excellent. So we'll be happy to keep fielding questions. If you have more questions, please feel free to add them into the chat. In the meantime, what I'll do is I want to make sure to share again that web page. If at any point you have questions that come up after this meeting, you can always add comments to the survey, but maybe you want to reach out to us to ask us specific questions or share comments with us directly. So this is Tim's email. You can contact him. You could also contact me anytime, either one of us. Our contact information is also reachable through the webpage. So you can go to the webpage and email us through the webpage portal. So multiple different ways to get in touch with us. And we're always happy to hear from you, whether that's questions or comments. We would love to hear from you. Okay, I will stop sharing here, and then we will just check in on that chat, see if we have any additional questions coming in. All right. Is there a date when you expect to hear back from the city about fencing?
That we will know that when we go into land use. So that will take a little bit of time. So the next step is while we're preparing to go for the board, we're going to prepare a pre-application to go into the city and say, hey, we have this new project. What we do is we take the concept plan and saying this is what we would like to do. And in that meeting, they'll help give us some guidance in some direction. They basically go through all the code and look at all the things that we would like to do on the site and whether that's allowed or not by code. And then they provide that information back to us. And then we respond and say, okay, this is what we'd like to do or not. So we'll know that later. Let's see, we're already in November. So probably December, January, we hear information back. And again, if you can contact me directly through the website or send me an email, and I can let you know as well how that is going. And our plan, I guess, would be typically we don't put fences around our parks. We keep them open. They're public spaces. But again, every situation is every park is a little bit different. And I know actually today the new development to the south of us, they put up a brand new cedar fence on their property line. So all the way across the south side, with the exception of the opening for the roadway, is all brand new cedar. The fence on the inside, which is ours, it's just falling over, that would be taken down. The property line again to the west is in bad shape. I think those are condominiums, and to the north it's also as well. If the city, if we're not required to put up a fence, we typically don't. And if there are neighbors that would like a fence, we can strongly for a fence. At the minimum, we'd probably put up a chain link fence along the property line. But again, we typically don't put fences around our properties.
Great. Thank you, Tim. And we'll take a little bit more time, see if anybody else has any additional questions that they'd like to share in the chat. All right, I don't see any coming through right now. So what I think I'll do, of course, please feel free to throw those into the chat. And as I mentioned, email us anytime. I went ahead and added Tim's email into the chat there. If you'd like to access that, again, you can access that through the webpage or contact us through the webpage anytime. I also wanted to remind everyone that this meeting will be posted up on YouTube. You can always go back and take a look at it. We do have several documents posted on the webpage, including the new concept plan that we've shared today, as well as information about the name and any other planning documents. If you're looking for something you can't find on there, again, please reach out to us. We're happy to help. If you have any neighbors that you'd be willing to share that YouTube with, that would be wonderful too. We'd love to get the word out about that in the survey. In the meantime, we're so delighted you joined us tonight. Thank you everyone for attending and watching this presentation if you're on YouTube. We appreciate your time and your thoughtful input, as it's really deeply meaningful to this project and making it come together. And as mentioned, we'll have more community engagement opportunities coming up. The survey that's open right now, and as Tracy mentioned about the play area too. So always keep an eye on that webpage if you'd like project updates. You can also sign up for those and receive emails that will come in maybe every month or two about different news about the project. And we'll look forward to continuing to work with you as we move forward. And I'll pause there and see if Tim or Tracy or anyone else has any last thoughts or things to share. All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us this evening. We really appreciate your time. We'll go ahead and end the meeting there, and please reach out to us if you have any questions or comments that you want to share anytime. Take care.
Thank you.